Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Just My Stupid Opinion. I'm Adrian Lloyd. So today I wanted to talk about Canuck Law. Canuck Law is a website that has been operating for several years now. It is an investigative journalist website, an independent one, that is run, I think, by a single woman, I believe. And I've said in the past, I've shown some of the articles from Canuck Law in the past. I have said before that Canuck Law is one of the better investigative sites that investigative journalistic sites that is out there. And I'll still say that. I've seen plenty of good work from her. However, there was a video that was released on her YouTube channel earlier this week, and that is what I wanted to discuss because I greatly disagree with a lot of what she ended up putting out. And what this concerns is Diagolon. So as many people probably know, there is a tour that's happening right now with the founder, Jeremy McKenzie, as well as a few of his friends, the lieutenants of the whole organization, Alex Friend, Derek Harrison, and his girlfriend Morgan there. So they're currently going across Canada where they're doing some speaking gigs, where they're doing meet and greets, from all the way from one side all the way to the other and then back, doing this over the course of the month. And so as this was taken off, that's when Canuck Law ended up releasing her video about it. And I'm going to go over it as to where my problems are with this video. So without further ado, we're just going to get right into it. One thing I will say is that I have edited it down a bit. There were some aspects I didn't feel like talking about or just didn't think they were relevant. And I have edited those out. The original video is probably about 25 minutes to 30 minutes long, so I've edited those down just for brevity's sake. So let's get into it. So, obviously you can tell from how this is starting off that Canuck Law is not a fan of Diagolon. And she doesn't have to be. But right off the bat, there are some, what I would say were some pretty incendiary accusations. First one is about how it is a grift. To me, a grift has always, and the term grifter and grifting has been just thrown around by just about everyone these days. And I find it's getting to the point where the word is losing all meaning. To me, a grifter has always been someone that is making money by appealing to someone's principles without holding those principles for the sole fact of making money. Rebel News does this quite a lot. They're one of the best examples I have of grifting right now, because Rebel News, what they end up doing is they've got all these campaigns that they run to get people to donate to them. Donate for this, donate for that. You know, David Menzies has been arrested again. This person's been arrested again. Get Tommy Robinson out of jail. Pay for their lawyer fees. Help us fight this in court. On and on and on and on. Over and over, this is what they do. Now, one thing about this is that the way Rebel News operates when it comes to them collecting money is that they do not collect specifically for the situation for that they say they are. So, for instance, if it is something to do with getting Tommy Robinson out of jail, for instance, the money that is being donated there is not solely being used for Tommy Robinson. It basically goes into a big pile of money, and they'll use what they will need, whatever they want or whatever they're willing to give for this this cause, whether that's get Tony out of prison, or if it came down to during the Freedom Convoy where he was saying he was going to help pay for these people that had been arrested, which many of them did not receive the funds from that, as well as other people had their funding cut off before their court cases were done. But basically, it gets put in this big pile of cash, and they will use that money as they see fit. And to me, this is a good, perfect example of grifting, because they make it seem like they're appealing to you in order to get you to donate to them. And even if they reach their goal of what they need, they will keep accepting more and more and more donations. In fact, this was a big thing why years ago, Lawrence Southern left Rebel News, because they were crowdfunding for their trip to Israel, and they reached their goal, but they were still advertising for it, still accepting donations. They were just trying to get as much money as they possibly could. Chris Sky is a good example of a grifter to me, because this is a guy that basically just shows up to increase his popularity and sell his merchandise, but he doesn't really go there for the cause. This ended up happening during the Freedom Convoy too, where as it was ongoing, he basically showed up just to sell his merchandise, and then he left. This is a guy that presents himself as a freedom fighter, and in the most important protests that we've had in years, he couldn't bother to show up for more than a few hours, maybe a day, just so he could make his money and go. People who have basically presented themselves as fighting for the cause of improving Canada, who then take the money that is being donated to them in order to run away to another country, that to me is a grifter. And where I think this is different is because what they're doing here is, first of all, a lot of it is free. There's a lot of meetups that they're doing that are free of charge. So that's one reason. Two is because people are getting what they paid for at these events. People are they were very clear as to what this is. It's basically going to be the Raging Dissident podcast in person, with having a couple guest speakers. In this case, it's having Derek Harrison and Alex Friend there. So it's very clear as to what this is. But one reason I reject the idea of it being just generally it being a grift is because I think out of all the streamers I've ever watched, two of them, one of them being Jeremy McKenzie, the other being a streamer called Mr. Medicare, are the only ones I've never seen it give any crap to their audience who don't pay. When they're doing their live streams, if people pay, they pay. If they don't, they don't, and they're fine with it. Many others I've watched at some point have started complaining about how people are watching them and they're not sending in donations. So that's one reason I don't really consider it to be a grift, is because he really is, and he said more than once that, people will pay him what they think he deserves. Meaning that if they want to donate $100 over the course of a week, or they want to donate $10 over the course of the week, that's what they feel he has given them. So that to me is another reason why it's not a grift. One thing about people who grift is it's money, 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 money all the time. So that's why I don't think calling it a grift. I think it's incredibly inaccurate for what a grift is and what is being presented and what they're doing. People are getting their money's worth. Now, the other thing is that with this, it's talking about how it's actually a honeypot tour, that you're going to go, if you go to any of these events, your name, photo, and contact details are likely to end up in a police file. If you're actually active in the scene right now, in the political scene, with everything that's happening, and you are somebody that's actually trying to make a real difference here, do you think you're not already, in some regards, in a police file? With everything that's happened with Diagolon over the past 4 years, you can't tell me that now, as you're going to this meetup, is when they would have your name and photo and contact details are going to be documented by the police. The fact of the matter is being online is not as anonymous as people think. It's very easy for law enforcement to get information on who's posting what. There's been plenty of situations where people have had anonymous accounts, have had visits from their local police for things that they've posted online. So it's these meet and greets or these events that they're actually throwing, that is far from when you're actually going to end up in a police file. You're going to end up there because Diagolon has been brought up in the House of Commons more than once. It was just a couple months ago when there was a whole bitch fight between Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau over that picture that ended up getting released. And then it was also used during the Freedom Convoy. So don't pretend like this is what's going to be the catalyst that are going to get people on the radar. People who are involved in this community, and people who generally are just kind of involved in movements like this, are well aware that in some capacity they've already been documented by law enforcement. It depends at which level of law enforcement, and it also depends on how much importance they put on you. Maybe it's just something that they're just taking in names just to keep track of who's in the community, or maybe you're somebody that is actually important enough that they are actively keeping an eye on you. See, I think I'm in probably a police file somewhere, but I'm just a name in the file. I'm not one that is actually being stalked. I'm not one that actually is being they're trying to listen into my phone calls and try to get my information, because I'm not important enough. Some people are, but I'm sure just by talking about the things I talk about and being in the communities that I'm in, that my name is somewhere on these files, and many other people's are too. But the implication here is that it's starting right here, this is where all these people are going to get honeypotted. They didn't need a tour in order for that to possibly be a case.
Speaking about reporting things to authorities, have you ever reported extremist behavior to authorities?
Yes.
Can you please tell us about that?
One example, let's see, would have been fall, I think, of 2021. There was a group online identifying themselves as Lynx something. It was armed men in the woods with masks. One of them specifically said, this is a call to arms, which, as I understand, is an illegal thing to do. It was very clear that they intended to, we're promoting the idea of arming people, arming citizens. I think it was an acronym for Liberate Your Neighborhood or something like that. And to engage the forces of the state in violent confrontation. They were commenting on my videos and inferring that they were trying to connect with me and so on. I found this very alarming, and again, putting potentially myself at risk, but other people that follow me and it could be exposed to this and ensnared in whatever was going on there. So once I became aware of the video, I immediately called the mounted police about it.
And did you receive a response?
I did. They called me back. They asked me, what I knew about it. If anything, I said, all I know is what I've seen on the internet. I'm simply bringing it to your attention because if I were you, this is something that would concern me. And that was pretty much the end of that interaction. I'm not sure whatever took place after that, but
you didn't have follow-up after that?
I don't think so. I think there was one constable from Saskatchewan that may have called me to say they may have more questions in the future, but that was the end of that interaction.
Were you willing to have a continuous relationship with law enforcement to assist them in identifying legitimate threats to public safety?
Of course, if there was anything for me to give them or assist them in any way, I would have, yes.
Few guys in the woods I've never met, never talked to, never heard of them in my life, doing videos in the woods with masks and guns and rifles. All of them the ones yet to be banned, by the way. So they were all legal, non-restricted rifles. I thought that was cute. Reading a script that sounds like it was probably written by somebody at CSIS or the RCMP. Like, is this what right-wing guys talk like? Is this what they say? It was really embarrassing. But, however, the key takeaway that I found was that they said this is a call to arms while holding guns in the woods at night on a video with masks on. That's an illegal phrase to say. That is a That's a charge. That's an offense in Canada. A call to arms, like verbatim. He said it like as per the criminal code would need you to say for something like that. And these accounts were trying to wiggle their way into the community and kept commenting on videos and streams and this kind of thing while posting this kind of content. So you see where this is going, how they're doing this poison well scenario. Or if not, they're just a bunch of knuckleheads in the wood. Like, I don't know these guys. I'm not taking responsibility for this. I'm not having people go down for some idiot, you know? So I called them on the shit, and I called the RCMP, and I said, hey, you seeing this? You know who these guys are? You gonna do anything about that? You're gonna keep fucking me around? Huh? Yeah. You know what? I reported that, and the police never called me back. They never looked into anything. No charges were laid either. Not that I'm aware. Nothing ever happened with that. It all just kind of went away. Isn't that strange? Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Yeah. There's things you can, you know. But there is a story here going around about this, how I'm a snitch, you see. I'm working with the feds. I'm fucking ratting people out. That's it. I called the RCMP and I said, hey, you seeing this?
So a little bit to unpack there. So first of all, I've seen this video many times by detractors of Diagolon and Jeremy, concerned about what he said during the Emergencies Inquiry Commission, after everything that happened with the Freedom Convoy, and he was called to testify for that. That's what he ended up saying. So the first thing is that if you are running a community where you know that your people want to discredit you, where you know that people are probably trying to break you up, which is the case a lot of times with Diagolon, why wouldn't you be reporting something like that? Because it was quite clear that these people in this video were trying to show an association with your organization. And I don't know if we actually call it the same thing here in Canada, but I know we have the same law, which is in the States, they've got something called RICO, which is a racketeering charge, which means that if they can charge a couple members of a group with a crime, they can charge all the members with a crime. So it's quite clear that this is what they were trying to do. If they're trying to wiggle their way into the community when they have no real association, while posting inflammatory video like that would definitely get people into trouble, then it makes sense that the one thing you would do would be to wash your hands of any responsibility of it. And the one way to do that would be to contact the RCMP and tell them, this is what I saw, I have nothing to do with that. Doing so would actually, you've covered your bases, that if they ever did try and come back and say, you're part of this, we're going to arrest you for it, well, you have contact with the RCMP where you reported it. So it actually makes a lot of sense that this is something that someone would do in this situation. The other thing is, too, is that in this situation, the person who's asking him his questions, that's his lawyer. It wasn't that it was somebody else from the commission that was trying to get him in a gotcha moment. This is his lawyer that was trying to defend him and get him off. I mean, in this situation, there are no charges that would be brought up. But the point is that the lawyer is trying to make him look good. So why would be the one thing that he would do would bring up and try and make it appear as if he's some sort of Fed, or as if he's working with the feds in this capacity? And this is the sort of thing about this video, is that it doesn't really stick to one accusation. It kind of jumps around, where it's at one point it's pretty much saying that he's a Fed. The next one is that, well, no, he's a Fed informant, kind of like this. Then it was that he's actually, him and Diagolon and the people in there have been put there in order to make everyone else in this sort of sphere that criticizes multiculturalism, immigration, yada yada. It's meant to make them look bad, but then also goes on to admit that they're being watched by RCMP. So it's not quick. I really don't know what the actual accusation of this video is, because it was kind of all over the place as to what is the end goal for Jeremy Mackenzie with Diagolon. But yeah, that was That was why I don't think this video, as a lot of people like to pretend it's some sort of gotcha moment, I don't think it is a gotcha moment. Because it's not like he was just going around finding random groups that were doing things and trying to get them into trouble. It was doing this with an organization, with a group of people that were trying to associate themselves with his movement. And the first thing you got to do is protect your own ass whenever that ends up happening. So it makes sense to me why that would end up saying. So yeah, we see here it says, nope, not a Fed at all. So insinuating that. And the Fed accusation is something that gets thrown out all the time. And a lot of times it's thrown out by conservatives because this is the new way to discredit someone. You know, back in the day, it's not even that long ago, but this is to replace, you know, the idea when people say, oh, you're racist or you're sexist or you're homophobic, because people don't care about that, especially people on the right. They don't give a shit about that anymore. So the discrediting doesn't really work anymore. But one discredit that actually does work is accusing someone of being a Fed or working with the Feds, because now people become suspicious of who they are and what they're trying to do. So this is an accusation that gets thrown around all the time, especially by conservatives. But here's the first one where it's we've gone from he's informing on the Fed to being a Fed, because there's a big difference between the two, between a federal asset and being a Fed themselves. Being a Fed is a federal agent, someone who works for the RCMP, someone who works for CSIS in the States, someone who's an FBI, works for the FBI or the CIA, any of these. So there's a big difference if you're going to say you are informing for the Feds and you are a Fed. And ironically enough, it seems like for a lot of just pure conservatives, the ones that they actually do have more support for are the ones that are kind of turning out to be Feds. Like that leader of the Proud Boys that turned out to be a literal police informant, a literal federal informant. And the Proud Boys are one that are usually more propped up, I find, by conservatives. And a lot of the other groups are the ones that they're accusing of being Feds. But I digress. But anyway.
What, and then what's fucking Pial or his wife doing? Isn't she from Cuba or something?
She's from Venezuela.
Venezuela, right? You know, does
And
like,
she is hot as fuck. Oh my goodness.
that's how else would she have got out?
Like a fucking midnight snack when everybody's asleep, and I'm gonna sneak into this fridge and cut me off a piece of that Venezuelan brown cake. Oh
6
my
hours.
goodness.
6 hours with the old lady and look at you.
Good. Good for you,
Would you be saying
PP.
that if Morgan was there? Would you be saying that if Morgan was
Yes.
there?
No, she'd be like, she is hot. We should both fuck her. And I'd be like, we should. Let's rape her. Like, we have these conversations. We target people we may power
Fucking
rape in the
prison.
future. Oh, dude. No. We'll just be like, it's not really a sex thing. It's like, we just want to show people that we can do things to you if we want to. It's a power move.
Now, you don't have to like his humor if you don't want. There are some accusations by Canuck Law in here that things that he's kind of joking about, he's like things that he's not joking about, they're saying are jokes. This one I do believe is just a joke, just judging by the way he was saying it and how he was reacting to it. And you don't have to like his humor. You don't have to like the jokes. You can think it's disgusting or whatever you want. But to suggest that they were given a pass, yes, there was an investigation that was done into it. That's where things start. No matter what we're talking about, it always starts with an investigation. So clearly there was the law enforcement looked into it, but didn't think it was anything that would actually perceive as a real threat. It's obvious that it was nothing that if they were actually to try and make an arrest on it, would be pretty quickly thrown out of court, because I think any judge could see that he wasn't being serious on this. But also at the same time, people who actually work for the system don't ever have this problem. Ben Shapiro has basically been since October 7th, has been talking about nuking Gaza, and not a single charge has been brought against him, and he can say whatever the hell he wants. And nothing's going to ever end up happening for him because he is the acceptable conservative voice. He works for just as much for the system as a Fed does. And this is really, people who work for the system, they don't have to worry about these kind of repercussions. Because they're not even going to bother bringing a charge against someone who actually works for the system in this capacity. So just because he said a rape joke and then got investigated for it, but wasn't charged, that doesn't mean that he's some sort of Fed or works for the system. And no, that's not the type of thing that cops are going to put on their SWAT gear and go busting down doors over. That's something that might get you a visit from the cops, maybe a phone call from them, possibly, depending on how much attention it brings to it. But no, Canuck Law is acting as if this is some sort of proof that Diagolon is in fact a controlled opposition, and Jeremy McKenzie is working for the feds as someone that's meant to bring people in, what was his name? Grant Bristow, I think was his name, the guy who worked in Heritage Front. Sort of like a Grant Bristow who starts up an organization to bring people in, and then they can bust the whole group and arrest them. Although if that is the case, I'm still waiting for that to happen. It's been almost 5 years since Diagolon. It's been more if you're including Plaid Army, which was the group before that. And there still has not been this great bust, this great sting that keeps getting suggested by people like Canuck Law that is supposed to happen. Because I really don't know what the end goal is. You can pull all these people together in order to put them on a list, and that way they can be monitored. But what is the point of that if you're just monitoring the whole time? In fact, with the way that things are going these days, and the way that government and law enforcement talk, they would love nothing more than a big bust against a far-right group to show that they are effective, to show that they're trustworthy to the mainstream political junkies, especially because for several years now, cops have been getting nothing but shit on by people in the left wing of politics, especially. They would love nothing more than to have this big bust, but it's been almost 5 years since the beginning of Diagolon, and still we have nothing. It's been 7 or 8 years since Plaid Army, and still nothing. But hey, he made a rape joke and didn't get arrested for it, so clearly that means Fed.
Oh, the right wing's always lying. Oh, we're lying? All these, we're putting a little project together, actually. We've got all the dead faces of all the dead kids and women and men.
Little context. Leading up to this, I just cut it out. He was making fun of Rachel Gilmore, who's used to work for Global News, I think it was, who has been a big critic of Diagolon, makes her little TikTok videos where she loves talking about it. So this is sort of the lead up to this, what he's talking about here.
All these, we're putting a little project together, actually. We'll
go back. We'll go back a little bit. But yeah, Rachel Gilmore has made all sort of outlandish claims, like how people from Diagolon are following her constantly and shit like that.
Oh, the right wing's always lying. Oh, we're lying? All these, we're putting a little project together, actually. We've got all the dead faces of all the dead kids and women and men and people of our country that have been butchered, slaughtered, killed, and raped and attacked by your precious migrants that you love so much. You love them more than us. You've chosen them over your own people. So that's why, the rope, you're a traitor. You deserve the same fate as anyone.
Yeah, so clearly going here, we see at the bottom, you're a rope, you're a traitor, you deserve the same fate. Yeah. See, Jeremy McKenzie and Diagolon, one problem they've had for a long time is the mass immigration that's coming into this country and the crime that has come with it. Because that is one thing, reoccurring theme with the Raging Dissident podcast, is the crimes as coming from the migrants and the way it is perverting our society and how people have gone along with it. how they are allowing it to happen. They're doing nothing. In fact, they're even running defense for the people that are doing this. And he says, you get the rope, you're a traitor, you deserve the same fate. Well, what do you do with people that betray you? See, the thing is that, and you're going to see over this in another clip or two in this video, is that there's this impression that he is calling for violence. That is not the case. He's waiting for violence. And I don't mean to start it. I mean, in his mind, there is an inevitability that everything that we're experiencing now in this country is going to come to a head. It'll be this in Canada, it'll be the same in America, it'll be the same in Europe. With so much mass immigration that's coming here, you're having ethnic conflicts now, and we're seeing ethnic crimes that are being committed against native populations of those countries. Native Canadians are being raped, assaulted, murdered. Native Americans, same thing. Native Europeans, same thing, over and over. So he's waiting for violence. He's not calling for violence. He's not telling anyone to go out and do this, go out and do that. In fact, the only thing that he is calling for is for people to unify, to protect themselves and make themselves better. And this is the thing that a lot of critics don't understand about this group. The whole point of it was started during COVID. It started during COVID because a lot of people were rejected by their friends, rejected by their families, and they didn't have anyone to watch their backs as things were getting worse and worse and worse, as politicians were making accusations against us, as the Prime Minister sat up on an interview saying about how terrible the unvaxxed were and how long are we going to tolerate them, as people were calling for them to be thrown into camps. People were saying that they should have their property and all their material items taken away from them. They should have their children taken away from them. They should have their jobs taken away from them. They were essentially calling for the murder of anyone who is unvaxxed. Even if they're not talking about actually grabbing a machete and going out and do it, they wanted people's jobs taken away. Well, what happens when you take their jobs away? Well, they can't pay their bills, they can't feed their family, so their wives or husbands and children end up homeless on the street, hungry and broke. So as all this was happening, it was about people that could come together and protect themselves. And then when the mandates were done, it was still about protecting themselves because we could see the deterioration that was happening in this country. And now we're seeing a lot more of that coming from immigrants. We have the Khalistani movement that is basically wants to carve out their own country here in Canada. And that's just one example of the problems that we're facing with immigration, with this mass immigration. Whole cities are getting taken over by foreigners. So it's about people that can come together and look after each other when things get bad. That was always the point of this group. It started out as a meme. It absolutely did. But the reason it morphed out of just a simple joke into something serious is because other people started to take it seriously. It was really, like I said, it was really about people coming together and protecting themselves. And that could apply without it actually being a real movement. But then it gets cited as the reason for the Emergency Act in Ottawa during the Freedom Convoy. It gets cited again by the Prime Minister because Pierre Poilievre took pictures with some people in a trailer that had a Diagolon flag that had been scribbled on there a couple years earlier. And then people all online and in the media have been taking it very seriously. And that's why it became a legitimate movement. It started out as a meme. The leader of Diagolon was a goat figurine, for fuck's sakes. So, getting back on track, he's not calling for violence, he's waiting for violence. Because sooner or later, there will be this conflict that ends up happening. And one of two people is going to be labeled as a traitor. Either people in our sphere win this conflict, and then the people who allowed all this to happen are deemed traitors, and you know what happens with traitors, or people in our sphere lose, and we're branded as traitors. And once again, we all know what happens with traitors. So yes, does he say you just rope or gun? Which one do you want to choose? This is why. But at no point has he ever actually said, go out and string someone up. Go out and shoot someone. Not once has he ever said that. Moving
You're a terrible human being. I don't care what happens to you. If you got gang raped to death by Indian migrants in the street, I would laugh. I wouldn't even stop them. I would just stand there and go, well, nature's a playground, isn't it? The gaslighting that comes out of these people. Oh, we are victims. It's so scary. You should be scared. If you're barely hanging on to reality right now that you need to fucking be drunk constantly and coping with pills and you're going to get fucking just run over. Like just ground down to pulp. How much are these Jews paying you anyway, by the way?
So again, the criticism is that they're full of rape and murder jokes, and first of all, they're not full of them. I would say the murder a little bit more, but the thing is that the Canuck Law has a problem with is that from our point of view, these people are our enemies. The people who have allowed this to happen are our enemies. They have actively defended the mass immigration. They've actively defended how the government operates. And because of that, the Native Canadian population is being crushed more and more every single day. And our problem is that we won't defend our enemies. Now, why would we do that? Because the other point is, too, with a lot of this, is that people made their decision. If they chose to do nothing, if they chose to say nothing, and better yet, if they chose to defend the actions that were being taken by our government and by the people who are pushing things like diversity, then they've made their decision, and their fate, if they meet a fate at the hands of the decision that they made, at the hands of defending the people coming into this country who don't care about them, who want to take advantage of it, who want to take over, then why would we go out of our way to defend our enemies? Because this puts our own friends and family just as much in danger as it does themselves. So someone like Rachel Gilmore, who goes out there and starts kvetching because, oh my God, they say such mean things about immigrants. Well, when one day that comes back to bite her in the ass and something happens, whether that she gets robbed, she gets beat up, or possibly raped, why would people that she has spent years trashing, years slandering, years trying to dox, years trying to get them fired, why would they go out of the way to defend her? It's a fuck around and find out mentality. They fucked around and now they found out. It's like, I think it was late last year, and I want to say it was New York City. There was this communist guy that's basically been all Black Lives Matter and refugees welcome, who is walking home with his girlfriend from some event when a black guy confronts him on the street to rob him and then stabs him to death. Why would someone who is on the opposite side want to stand up for him? Someone who tried to express these problems, and instead they were met with ridicule, they were met with hatred, they were met with vicious slander by him. Why would they want to step between him and the guy with the knife? And this is the point that he's making, is that there's no reason for us to protect our enemies from these events that are happening. because it could have been avoided. But because of their actions and the advocating that they've done, they now find themselves in a position where maybe that ends up happening. And they did it to themselves. So there's no reason for anyone to protect them for what they've done. And that, at the end of the day, is what these things are all about. And that's why it says, like, yeah, she puts in quotation marks jokes. No, he's not joking. But this is what he means. Now, you can agree or disagree. You can say that you think it's, we should be better than that. But we've tried that route many times. Over and over and over again. People on the right wing, especially conservatives, have wanted to stick by their principles. And I get that. I was one of those people for a long time. But at the same time, what is the point of sticking by your principles if you're going to be dead at the end of the day? There's actually a Stone Toss comic about that, where it's some guy talking about how, I think he's wearing like a MAGA hat, and he's just like, at the end of the day, it's like, you know what, no matter what, we stuck to our principles. And then the panel he's talking to his buddy, and the panel zooms out, and they got a gun pointed to the back of their head, and that's it. You can sit there and you can throw out this about the morality of it and how you're sticking to it, but at the end of the day, what is the point? It's like, you hear some stories sometimes of people who are pacifists, where their family's in danger, and they won't do anything to protect their family because they have this principle of nonviolence. Well, what is the point? It's a nice sentiment to have, but at the end of the day, you're going to do more harm to yourself and the people that you love. And here's the next one. The next accusation, that it is meant to make people who are in this sphere look unhinged. I think more than anything, there's people who are more fed up with this than others. Because people like Canuck Law, what she wants to do is the same thing that we've been doing for years. She wants to put out her videos, she wants to put out her tweets, and think that that's going to change something. I, too, thought like that for a long time. If we can just inform people, they can see the problems, and then we can all change it so this doesn't happen anymore. We can make this country better. But it hasn't worked. Nothing has gotten better. In fact, it's gotten worse. So I think there's some people who are just more fed up with it. But at the same time, people are looking for more radical solutions to this. The problem with our government is that it's about 10 years behind what the Canadian people actually want. People wanted lower immigration numbers 10 years ago. Now they want to deport people. And that is the thing. It's like it says like to make them look unhinged. That has actually been the thing about Diagolon. Diagolon has not advocated for the mass slaughter of anyone. They have advocated for the mass deportation of people. There's a big difference between the two. So, I just had something for that and then I lost it. But yeah, the Canadian government is about 10 years behind. I remember there was an article from like 2017 or something that was saying that Canadians supported immigration until they were told the real numbers. And now at the time, those numbers were 250,000 permanent residents per year. That didn't include all the temporary foreign workers, the international students, and that has just gotten way worse since now. But essentially, when Canadians were told the real numbers, their support for it dropped dramatically. And now people are starting to notice how they're being replaced in their own country. They're starting to see how then they walk down the street, they don't really see that many people that look like them anymore. They're starting to see how things that they took for granted that was just part of their society, they can no longer take for granted anymore. A lot of places that you could trust your community, you can't really trust your community anymore. You know, you even see like in, not Norway, Iceland. I remember there was a video I saw a little while ago, and I think this is still the case now, but that's going to be changing because apparently Iceland needs more immigrants for some reason. But they would do things like if they went into a store, they would just leave their baby carriages right outside because they knew that the kid was going to be safe there. No one was going to come by and take the kid. No one was going to try and harm the kid. But that's not the case anymore for a lot of us in our own countries. So things that people took for granted and the society that they grew up in and that they appreciated is disappearing. And that is driving people to more radical solutions. And the thing is, whether you like it or not, people in the middle, the center left, the centrist, and the center right, you ain't really moving much. It's people on the extremes that are moving things, moving the Overton window. So that's why people are going to the extremes. Because people in the center generally want to find a compromise of some sort. And people on the fringes don't want to compromise. Especially people on the far right. Because they know that compromises always is to the greater benefit to the left than it is to the right. That the right has to give up a lot more. How when you give them an inch, they take a mile. But Diagolon's here to make people look unhinged. So, another thing about that is why would, if these guys were feds, why would the RCMP need to be monitoring the chat? Because they just wouldn't have been informing them of everything like that. And why would they inform people in their chat that they're being monitored by RCMP or CSIS? Which, once again, goes off. We've gone from Fed to federal informants to there to make us look bad.
With a dinner and dance fundraiser for Jeremy McKenzie.
Now, this is something, I cut out a lot of this, but it was talking about when Jeremy McKenzie was debanked. And says, McKenzie never lost any money. He was just told to take his business elsewhere. This point seems to be lost on supporters, led to subsidizing his grift. Now, Canuck Law makes it seem like this is no big deal. Just, you just got to go somewhere else. You got to go somewhere else. Well, no, it is a big deal because, first of all, if you get debanked, a lot of the other big banks don't want anything to do with you. Because in their eyes, there's a reason you ended up getting debanked. And the banking industry is like anything else. There's a lot of talk amongst all the people that are there. So someone like him who gets debanked, I think he was with Scotiabank, he can't just go to TD. He can't just go to RBC or any of these other banks that are out there because they're not going to take him there. In fact, people who have been debanked, I've heard that they've had to go to really small and obscure banks, like foreign banks, in order to be able to do their banking. But then on top of that, and this ended up happening in his situation, is that people who have mortgages through the bank can no longer refinance with them. So in his situation, and many others who have a mortgage, they have to get their entire mortgage paid off before it's time to refinance or they lose their homes. So this is not a small issue that when you get debanked like this, especially if you're a homeowner. And then there's also the problem that not everywhere takes certain bank cards. Now, we all know that credit cards that some places don't take. All of them, like, I find that you have a harder time finding places that will take an American Express card in Canada, although I think more are starting to now. But even one place where I used to work, we couldn't take a national bank card People would come in with a national bank card trying to pay, and it just would not work. No matter what they did, no matter how many times they put it into the reader, did not work. So this is another problem about when you lose, when you get debanked from a pretty large bank. That just because you can find a new bank doesn't mean your card's going to work. So this is not a small issue when you get debanked. It wasn't a small issue for him when he got debanked. She'll go on. You gotta cut out some of this.
So they just send you. They just send the messenger guy right on.
So David Freiheit, Viva Fry, set up 150,000 give send go for Mackenzie. Again, he never lost any money, but he was told to take his business elsewhere. Well, if you're upset about that, take it up with Viva Fry. Because it wasn't Jeremy that set up his own give send go, it was Viva Fry. And again, part of the reason for that is because he has a mortgage. A mortgage for he split from his first wife. I don't know what the details are, but they're on good terms, but they have children together. She lives in that house with her kids, meaning that if they lose the house, then his kids lose their home, a place for them to live. So again, it's not a small issue.
Messenger here, so sorry about that. And just to let you know, so your branch was just made aware of the news this afternoon. So and again, they don't have any further information. There was a decision made at the head office. And
the head office. Who would that be?
I don't have any other information in terms of names.
I wonder how many people it would take. Just as a thought experiment. Somebody do the math on this. What would happen if, let's say, given an average, what kind of average would you need? I don't know. 10,000 people. Let's make it interesting. 100,000 people, which is like a lofty but possible goal for activists. 100,000 people withdraw all of their money from the bank, or preemptively. First, they get lines of credit, the biggest ones they can that they'll be allowed, credit cards, all of that. They burn through all of it, withdraw it, cash, gold, coins, whatever. Spend all of it, spend all their money, withdraw everything they have, then go back to the bank and say, I'm never paying you, suck my dick. I declare bankruptcy. Bye.
Now, to me, this was a weird thing to put in because, first of all, yeah, thinking about crashing the financial system, I think most people have thought about crashing the financial system. Bankers are universally despised, both on the left and the right. That's pretty much the one thing that we agree on, where bankers suck, and they are screwing us. I mean, you learn things like fractional reserve banking, where if you put in $100 and they only have to keep 10% on hand, they can loan out your other $90 with interest, which means they basically just created $90 out of thin air, and they can keep doing this over and over and over again till they run out of money. So things like this is part of the reason that we have when we haven't reached hyperinflation yet, but our inflation's getting pretty bad, and just plenty of ways that we are being screwed over by the bank. So yeah, does he think about crashing the financial system after this ended up happening? Sure, but I don't think anyone has to be debanked to think something like this. We all kind of think like this. One of the main reasons that we are in so much debt, both us and the Americans, and well, basically every Western country is so much in debt, is from banks, because they don't give a shit. They don't care. If they're lending out money to the government, they will do it with high interest rates because they know that that's going to get paid off. So much of the debt that we pay off annually, we're paying off just in interest. And in fact, this is what ended up happening, because in 1974, Pierre Elliott Trudeau ended up making changes to how the government can borrow from banks. Before, we used to borrow from the Bank of Canada with very little to low interest rates. But he changed that, and he allowed it for governments at all level, municipal, provincial, and federal, could borrow from other banks. And there's a graph by the Fraser Institute which shows Canada's debt from Confederation up until I think it was around 2015, maybe a bit later than that, where it showed a graph of all our debt. And in 1974, when Pierre Trudeau ended up doing this, the graph just does a sharp increase. So you can see how that is screwing us. That within a couple years, we had twice or more the debt that we had from World War II. That shows how much we're getting screwed. And it's just gone worse. It gets worse and worse every single year. So the fact she wants to run defense for the banks is just absurd to me. Because that's the only thing I can take out of this by what she's putting in, as using it as a criticism towards them, that we are it's a bad thing to want to do this. We need a total overhaul on how we do things in this system, how we look at our banks, how we regulate our banks. We need a complete overhaul on that. But, the poor banks, right? Right, Canuck Law? The poor banks.
Tony, make sure you clip this one so you can watch me laugh at Indians getting run over by fucking trains.
Little context on this. So this is Ferryman's Toll, Alex's friend, and he's spent some time, immigration is one of his big talking points, especially when it comes to Indians. Now, the backstory on this is one of his streams, he was talking about everything that's going on with Indians, and basically he was saying that they're stupid, and one thing that he ended up showing was a few clips of Indians that were walking on train tracks and getting hit by trains. And there was a freakout by people like Rachel Gilmore and the Anti-Hate Network and other people of their ilk about how could he laugh at this? So this was a fuck you to them by saying, okay, you didn't like that? Then I'm going to dedicate a whole segment of my show doing this. And that's the backstory on this. And it's blurred out, but essentially it's just a series of is a compilation of videos of Indian people trying to cross over tracks right as the train's coming, or just walking along the tracks as a train's coming and somehow don't hear it and going flying through the air. Which you can hate if you like, but I think he made his point.
Woo! That was a pull start.
Yes, it's all an act. Like I said, it's all intended just to make people like Canuck Law and others who like to tweet out about immigration and multiculturalism. It's all meant to just make them look bad. That's the whole point of Diagolon. Don't you know that? The whole point is so that way, by Diagolon acting the way it does, then it will allow the government to open the floodgates. It's not like... I don't know for a fact that Canuck Law actually supports Pierre Poilievre, but it's not like Pierre Poilievre himself has basically suggested opening the floodgates. Regardless, supposed to be the right-wing candidate, wants to open the floodgates, spends half his time appealing to Indians about how he's going to make it easier for them to come on over and bring their family with them. And that was the thing about this report that ended up getting released within the last month about the foreign interference. They said it was China and India were the two biggest ones. Well, it seems quite clear to me who each country was paying off. It's quite clear that China was paying off the liberals because we know how much Trudeau and the rest of the liberals love China. I mean, Trudeau said he loved their basic dictatorship. And it's quite clear that India was doing this to the conservatives, because it's quite clear how much the conservatives love the Indians. Funny how our two major parties are more concerned about foreigners than they are about us, isn't it? But no. It's just Diagolon making people like Canuck Law and others look bad. That's the whole point. Not that we can all see that politicians don't give a shit about us, about how these people are being brought in to replace us. They're doing everything they can to replace us. At first, it was just bringing us in to try and replace the population. Now they're trying to replace us in our own jobs by offering subsidies to employers who hire foreign workers. Well, who the hell are they going to hire when, on one hand, it could be a native Canadian who they have to pay the full salary price for, or an Indian or a Chinese or whoever else that they can have thousands of dollars subsidized by the government that they don't have to pay? Who's it going to be?
Okay, hang on. I got to go off. Remote pain. I'm sure if Jeremy was worried about live stream commenters, he wouldn't stream anymore. Bitching about what people say in the chat seems weak to me. Why? Like, it's not people that are saying the truth. It's not people that are making insightful comments. It's not people that are saying intelligent things. It's fucking morons who come in here and say, like, seditious or basically illegal things that could get you in shit, like like actual hate speech. Because here's what they do. They take that and then they use it in these court cases to say, like, you see, like, this is a radicalization thing. They're basically
Now, here's the difference, and it should be a pretty obvious one to me. He says, like, oh, why are they bitching about people that are coming in saying things in their chat? Let's say I build a house, right? It's my house. I put in the work. I poured the concrete. I put up the walls. I shingled the roof. I did all this. And then I decide to burn it down. That's my choice. Now, let's say I do all this again. I pour the concrete. I put in the walls. I shingle my roof. And some other person comes in to burn it down. Do you think that's the same? Something that I built up, I can do what I want with it. If I want to burn it down, I can burn it down. If I build up my business and then I want to tear that business down, I can do that. It's mine. But as soon as someone else comes in and makes that decision for me, well, now we got a problem. And this is the same thing for people like them. If they want to build up a community and then people are going to come in and try and ruin that community, then of course they're going to have problems with it. It's the same thing with my channel. It's the same thing with Canuck Law's website. If Canuck Law decides tomorrow she wants to ruin her own website, she can ruin her own website. But if I'm trying to go in and ruin her website, she's going to have a problem with it. It should not be very difficult to understand this. But apparently it is to her. Apparently she can't understand the difference between one and the other.
This is the kind of rhetoric that they're espousing. This is the kind of people that they're attracting, and then they use it against you. Yeah, I know I have zero control over that. That's exactly why I'm fucking saying it, you moron. You have control over that. You guys do. So you get control over yourselves and stop doing that shit, for fuck's sakes. You have control over it.
I think it should be said, too, that if you guys are buying our shit and wearing our shit and you commit a crime,
that's another one.
There's no way to get kicked out of this community faster. If you are out representing our brand by out there committing crimes while wearing it, well then, I'm sorry, there's no way faster to get kicked out of this fucking community. We don't want you representing us if you're committing crimes.
Again, it's a little bit different when you
make trains
it's different when it's your community and you want to represent it how you want to represent it compared to the people that you're allowing to come in. You want them to represent it the way you want it to be represented. And the thing is, too, There's only 2 times I've actually heard there's something about militia when it comes to Diagolon. And that is here, like what we just saw with Canuck Law saying that, and she's going to put in a court document at the end where there's some reference to something about a militia. But I've never heard anyone in the community talk about a militia. There are people that own guns and they like to get together and they like to shoot their guns, practice their targeting. But I have never seen anyone actually say we're forming a militia together. So that's one thing. But again, people like Derek Harrison, people like Alex Friend, people like Jeremy McKenzie, these are the people that built this place up. Jeremy McKenzie started it, but these 2 other guys are basically his top lieutenants, if you want to call it that. And these are the people who are the leaders in this community. So if they say they want to do this or they don't want people doing that, they have every right to do so, and they have every right to kick people out of the group if they're not following that. And they have kicked people out of the group multiple times. People that don't follow the rules, people who give them a bad name, people who are causing conflict with other members in the group get kicked out. And that's another thing, is that if this is just a fed op, I don't know why you would go kicking people out of the group. You figure that you would want people, as many people in there, so that way when you do your big bust, your big sting operation, you could have even more people that you could show. Wow, you know what? We arrested 100 people. But I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
We need to make trains trains are our greatest ally in the war against Bajeets. Honestly, I don't think we have, like, who else? The Pakistanis. I don't really want to ally with them, but trains I can get with. What about tigers? Are they
He's
on
not
our
joking. He's not joking when he says that. I'll tell you that right now. And I'm sure that's the whole point, is that Canuck Law is making it seem like they would say it's a joke, but it's not. It's not. But again, there's a big difference between telling people to go out and commit violence, or going out and commit violence themselves, and just something like this where you're saying, trains are our allies, or he's about to say tigers are our allies. Again, you don't have to like the rhetoric, but don't conflate the two. Do not conflate one with the other, because you are being extremely disingenuous if that's what you're doing.
Side, how many? 126. Okay, not bad. About one every 3 days. About once every 3 days, a tiger kills an Indian. They're on our team. Let's go.
Like, if you're an Anon, you think about the fact that the shit that you say gets used against us. I don't mind.
Fair enough. There's automatically a respect that comes along when somebody puts their face out there. There's more of a connection there. This guy is willing to put his face behind his words. So you have more respect for them that way. A lot of times you could go out and talk to these guys and
I've already covered this, but again, it's a big difference between you saying something in your own community that you built up and someone else saying something in the community that you've built up.
turn out to be complete fucking idiots just because they're saying shit online.
So yeah, I don't really have any more to add to this.
There is a certain amount of respect that comes with using your real name and your real face. Well, you're more likely to think about it if you're using your real name, and you're going to take your own consequences at that point as well.
Now, this was always something that I disagreed with Jeremy on, in that forcing people to register social media accounts with a public-facing identity, photo ID, driver's license, would go a long way to cleaning up the internet. I disagree with forcing people to do this, but he's right when he says that. And Derek is right when he talks about having more respect for someone when they're willing to put themselves out there. That was one reason, early on, my earliest YouTube videos, I didn't show my face. And then I started doing it. And this was one reason why, is because I'm going to stand behind what I say. For better or for worse, this is what I'm going to do. But I know not everyone wants to do that. So I don't actually think it should be forced to make it so public when you do this. But yeah, a lot of people, a lot of edgy boys that like to say shit, that is something that would stop a lot of that from happening if there actually could be, if they could be searched what they say, and there would be consequences for that. I accept my consequences. That's why I'm willing to at least make myself more, I'm willing to make myself more public. I know that some of the things I say is inflammatory, and I'm prepared for the consequences of that. In my mind, the repercussions of saying nothing and the repercussions of not trying to do everything I can is a lot worse than the repercussions that'll happen because of being identified for what I say. It's not, if ever that happens, it's not going to be fun for me. But I also know that the alternative of what could happen is going to be much worse. But again, I know that not everyone wants to do this, and I don't think it should be forced. So that is one thing I will say I've always disagreed on, is that forcing people to make public. Now, in this regards, it was because he was being, a lot of Anon accounts were just messaging him, basically just shitting on him and giving a lot of Anon accounts shitting on him. So he just grew tired of it, and that's why he posted that. I'm sure he believes it too, but that was where that came from.
And this is true. This is literally a fact that they are using the chats against these guys. Do you feel good about that?
It's happened before with me.
Yeah, I know.
I've had CSIS come and ask me printed out fucking questions like, what do you think this is? Something about gun or rope or something like that, and he was hinting towards something, and they asked me about it. Listen, I don't fucking know what he
Even
means.
that, like, that's not necessarily that bad, depending on the context. Like, just read it before you hit the send button and be like,
yeah, not particularly interesting. If they're being monitored, why wouldn't that end up happening? And plenty of other people in this community, but not just in this community, in other communities across the world, have had the same thing happen. In fact, people in this sphere of influence all across the world, the far-right guys, this has been a consistent thing that has happened, where law enforcement shows up to their house to talk to them about something, and it's an intimidation tactic. It's trying to get people to shut the fuck up. It's trying to get people to abandon the community. And this is what it's really all about. So it's not that interesting, and it's not that out of the ordinary that CSIS or the RCMP would show up at someone's house in this community or contact them in some way, trying to intimidate them. It happens to those in Australia. It happens to those in the US. It happens to those in the UK and France. It happens to those people in Germany. Everywhere where anybody has similar thinking as this, yeah, you're going to get a visit from law enforcement. So not that interesting. Is
this something that would look really, really, really fucking bad in a courtroom? Yes. Maybe I shouldn't hit send.
So this, and they're talking about is Thomas Zog. Now, Thomas Zog kind of became involved with, it was before Diagolon. So Thomas Zog became involved with Plaid Army because he was a guy, I think it was in 2018 or 2019 on Remembrance Day, he vandalized one of the cenotaphs, basically in protest saying that where we have the slogan, lest ye forget, and that we have forgotten the sacrifices that veterans make. And so he ended up going on to a stream with Derek and Jeremy where they talked about it. Then he became more involved in the community. But Thomas Zog was a fucking maniac. Like, he was not right in the head. And he was one of those people that started a lot of conflict in the community. And if I'm remembering correctly, sort of the end result of everything is that he eventually ended up threatening to kill himself. And people didn't call to get him swatted. They called so that way the police can come and do a wellness check on him to make sure that he wasn't actually going to kill himself. So it wasn't that he got swatted, it was a wellness check. big difference. One has cops busting down your door, armed to the teeth, ready to shoot anything that moves. The other one, they knock on your door and say, "Hey, you doing okay?" Anyway, this is what he ends up saying.
So that's interesting. But the part that I think is interesting and of note is right here where it says before they did the charge, they completed a CSIS deconfliction for Zog. A response was received with no issues. Well, what's deconfliction? I looked it up. Deconfliction is essentially a term used by police forces. It was coined in 1979, and it deals with agencies having overlap over one another. So they basically, what this means is that the RCMP are aware that within the Patriot movement, there are individuals that may be working for CSIS to try and manipulate the public into thinking specific ways, or who knows what for, maybe to gather information on the viewers. But the point is, they felt that they had to conduct a deconfliction. So buyer beware on the content, the Canadian content that you take in online. Because I mean,
so the implication here is that, well, obviously, yes, there's going to be law enforcement that are monitoring or active in movements that are such like this. Again, like I said earlier, it's the same thing all across the world, that this is what they do. But I think the implication here is that the people in Diagolon, people at the top, are the ones that are working for CSIS or working for the RCMP. And that's the idea behind it. Well, let's take a little bit of a look at my own. I wanted to look up my own definition of deconfliction. So here's one. This one's concerning humanitarian law, but deconfliction is a term originally used in the military jargon to describe the process of reducing the risk of friendly fire within an army or allied or between allied forces operating in the same battle space. Deconfliction has more recently been extended to include the exchange of information and planning advisories by humanitarian actors with military actors in order to prevent or resolve conflicts between two sets of objectives, remove obstacles to humanitarian action, and avoid potential hazards for humanitarian personnel. So that's one. And if we want to go, what was the actual? It was the National Criminal Intelligence Resource Center from the United States. What is deconfliction? There are two types of deconfliction: event deconfliction and target deconfliction, also referred to as case or investigative deconfliction. The use of an officer safety event deconfliction system provides controlled and secure monitoring of operations and the immediate notification of affected parties when potential conflicts arise with other law enforcement actions or events. The events can be anything from enforcement operations, warrant services, parole or probation searches, knock and talks, to surveillance operations. It is critically important for law enforcement personnel to be aware of other planned law enforcement operation occurrences at the same or nearby location. Event deconfliction occurs frequently, and those in charge of the operation must be able to communicate and safely coordinate plan of action. So all that means when they're talking about deconfliction is that there are multiple agencies that are involved at the same time, and they have to coordinate to make sure that they're not stepping on each other's toes during their own personal investigations. So if we know RCMP monitors the Diagolon, if we know CSIS monitors Diagolon, that means there's got to be a deconfliction to make sure that they're not intruding on each other's investigation. And it even says right here when they're giving the enforcement operation, it can be knock and talks. And that, in this situation, is what I think this is all about, because that's what they did with Thomas Zog. They knocked him, and they knocked on his door, and they spoke to him about this, and it could be as simple as that. But the implication here which is a word I've said many times tonight. I don't know why I keep going back to that well. But what Canuck Law and I think Thomas Zog were trying to suggest is that someone like Jeremy McKenzie was a Fed. And this is why there need to be some sort of deconfliction. But as far as I can tell, it has more to do with them monitoring the organization, and possibly even just because they were forced to go and talk to Thomas Zog. That could be as simple as that as to why there was a deconfliction. But that's what I got out of it. So moving on. Yeah, we all have been aware of that for years. So this is the court case, RV Schill 2024. So it says Mr. McKenzie was the founder and face of an organization named Diagolon. The content of the channel was anti-vaccine, anti-government, white nationalist, and white supremacist rhetoric. It involves conspiracy theory discussions and talk about assembly and militia by acquiring weaponry and body armor and planning meetups. Now, this is the only other place, like I said earlier, I saw anything about a militia. So I don't know if there's something going on behind the scenes that I don't know about, but this case and what Canuck Law said about it was the only two times I've ever seen anything about a militia. And maybe I'm just naive. I don't think I am, but maybe that's part of the problem. But anyway, Mr. Schill was recruiting ex-military members on behalf of Diagolon for the purpose of building a militia. One thing to notice there as well is at the bottom, section paragraph 28. The domestic charges were eventually withdrawn against both Ms. McNeil and Mr. Schill. Mr. Schill has never been charged with terrorist-related activities, which in Canada, I think forming a militia could fall under that purview. So, just an interesting point. Conclusion. The animating principle of the Firearm Act and the firearm-related provisions of the Criminal Code is public safety. Indeed, the Supreme Court of Canada has noted that the possession of firearms is a highly regulated activity for good reason, that gun ownership is a privilege, not a right. The totality of the information before me satisfies me that it is more likely than not that Mr. Schill poses a significant public safety concern. Which is an incredibly easy thing to do if you're trying to convict some far-right people. Given the nature and scope of this public safety concern, I decline to limit the term of the prohibition order or to carve out an exemption for crossbows. Mr. Schill is prohibited from possessing any firearms, crossbows, prohibited weapons, restricted weapons, prohibited devices, ammunition, prohibited ammunition, or explosive substances for a period of 5 years. Schill 2024. For just a meme, police were successful in getting a 5-year suspension of a firearm permit. This was based on association with Diagolon and McKenzie. Rest assured, there'll be more rulings like these. And yes, they claim to support free speech and gun rights, but the words and action of Diagolon ensure that there will be more of a crackdown in the coming years. So more of a crackdown on gun rights compared to what? Because I don't know if you've noticed, But the last legislation that was passed by the Liberals basically gutted any sort of gun rights that we had left in this country. And if you're upset about that, go talk to the CCFR. That was their whole point of existing, was to protect gun owners and their right to possess arms. Well, maybe not a right in Canada, but to protect their ability to have firearms. And they have failed time and time again. In fact, the amount of times that they have posted online about something so minuscule as if it's some victory is unbelievable. This was from a while ago. Was this? February 4th. Tracy Wilson, who is the head of the CCFR, says, a year ago today, concerned Canadians joined together to oppose Amendment G4, G46, and from C21, and we successfully defeated them. When we work together, we can accomplish great things. Now let's repeal C21. My response to that was another hollow victory. Legislation still passed, but we got a couple of amendments pulled. How terrific to only have 99% of the dick up our ass. And it's because Canadians celebrate hollow victories. We take something so small and we act as if we've accomplished something. Not just when it comes to firearms, but generally with everything that we have seen, everything that we deal with. We have to find the scraps and hold those up. Meanwhile, we're getting screwed like this. There is still C21 that decimated the ability of Canadians to own firearms. Many firearms has basically almost left them with black powder and muskets. But hey, we got a couple amendment polls, so victory. And actually, I did not realize this until I was looking for this today, but apparently that got me blocked by her. Yeah, I had no idea until I went looking for it and discovered that I was blocked from following her. But yeah, that is the accomplishments of the CCFR. And again, you're trying to make it seem like Diagolon is going to be the sole purpose for why gun rights in Canada get completely demolished. Well, it's not. They're already demolished, and it was long before Diagolon really was a household name with the government. So that's not the reason why. You say free speech is. Well, the government wants to limit free speech because of how badly they're fucking over the Canadian people, and they don't want people talking about this. That is the real reason, is because they know that if we're able to actually tell people how bad it's getting, a lot more people are going to start seeing things from our perspective. You know, they want to replace us in our own country, but we bring up the problems with immigration, and people are going to start seeing that. And then at the same time, there's not just, put out a tweet, start a hashtag, but it's actually, no, you got to start getting together in person, in real life, in order to protect yourselves and get better. Well, that's starting to pose a problem for them. That's starting to be a threat to everything that they want to accomplish. That is the reason behind the limitation of free speech in Canada. It's because people are starting to see through the bullshit. And when they see through the bullshit and see what's really happening, people are going to get angry. And they're going to ask for real change. But they don't want to give us real change. They don't want to give this to us. So how do they prevent that? They scare people. This is why they're trying to put on whatever it was, $50,000 fines for saying the wrong thing, where a random person that you don't get to know their identity can accuse you of hate speech, and why you'll get put in prison for years over this. It's to scare you into inaction so they can keep carrying on with their little plan. And by the time that people build up the courage again to say something about this and wanting to do something about that, it's going to be too late. That is the end goal.
These are fucking losers. Like, it's a loser country full of weak, soft, pathetic people.
So, we'll get into this video in just a second, but there's one more thing couple things I wanted to go over about what she posted here. First of all, starting this one on the right, it says, no one at Diagolon seems to work. What a slap in the face of the people paying their bills. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Like, if they're talking about the leadership of Diagolon, like people like Mackenzie and Harrison and the rest, streaming is their job. If that's grifting, then the vast majority of people that stream are grifters. Because I have seen people with 10 subscribers that are monetized looking for donations. Now, some people actually manage to turn that into a lifestyle. They get enough popularity, they have enough charisma that people want to donate to them, and that can become their full-time jobs. So they are working. They are providing a service that people are willing to pay for. The vast majority of people in the political scene have donations that they accept. Whether that's on the left, whether that's on the right. And this is the way that they work. You don't have to like the job, but it is a job. Many of the other people don't. Now, if the impression is that no one who supports Diagolon works, well, that's where you're fucking wrong. I don't know where the hell this is coming from, but again, this is same thing she said at the beginning of the video where no one seems to work. But now let's focus on this other part. A real mask-off moment. What they really think of the freedom movement, many of whom watch their streams. Do you want to know why Diagolon has been criticizing the freedom movement? Because many of those people are grifters. Many of those people are, like I've said before, are trying to appeal to people's principles and their emotions in order to get them to donate money for doing nothing. They're not doing anything. They're not really providing a stream for people to watch and enjoy in entertainment. What they are doing is just trying to fund their lifestyle so they can keep going off and getting drunk and not doing anything. And they're taking advantage of people. There was a case about this just a month ago. Because a lot of the people in the Freedom Convoy were regular people that were concerned about the direction this country was taking, and they came out from their homes to do the right thing to try and make a change. But there were people that were involved in that movement that decided that, hey, I got some popularity out of this. I got some people that want to donate to me. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go tour the country in this bullshit campaign where I'm not actually going to do anything. I'm not really going to accomplish anything, but I'm going to tell people that that's what I'm trying to do. And did this whole campaign of Save the Children, where, once again, all they did was keep screaming to save the children, showing up in different areas in the country and not doing anything. And in fact, when I said there was some event like this that happened a month ago, just outside of Ottawa, there's an area, a small town called Castleman. Now, what were their names again? I'll pull it up in just a second. Where are they? Crap. Danielle and Chet Wiggins. Now, these two people opened their homes. These two people opened their homes to people in the Freedom Convoy. For months, they moved in October of 2023, and they moved out last month. And they destroyed their property. This is a give, send, go that was started up for them. As you can see here, it's called Camp Cleanup. Help Danielle and cancer survivor Chet Wiggins restore Castleman Heart and continue their dream. Danielle and Chet have dedicated years of hard work building a dog rescue and kennel called Castle Heart. They generously open their property to hundreds of freedom fighters to build a Castleman camp, only to be left with significant damages, mess, and losses that have jeopardized their mission. So here we go. From Jason Levine, this is not okay. This needs to be addressed. I have reached out to several good people. They want to help. If you want to help, post their comments and let's show the Wiggins that good people do exist. I'll call them tomorrow to see what they need. So here's a post by Danielle Wiggins. To all the freedom people who enjoyed our property, this is what Pappy Norman, Fred, Gord, etc. left us with. They told us they would leave our property the way it was when they arrived last October 2023. We filled up 4 dumpsters so far. This is the appreciation and gratitude we've received from the oh so wonderful people. We could definitely use some hands to help us clean this up. Look at this mess. Look at what they left them. They opened their homes to them, asked them to maintain the property and help with some of the bills, which is a very reasonable thing to ask. And this is what these people did to them. People from the freedom movement. Bailey Sherry responding, I'm guessing. Even if Ryan was taking over, has nothing to do with the disgusting disaster they left us. Also, over $3,000 still owed on the Hydra, and now Gordon is not replying to my messages. We have done nothing but clean up for the last 3 weeks and nowhere close to being done. Rotting food, full fridge left to rot, freezer full of food left to rot after unplugging it just to be nasty. We gave so much of ourselves and our home, and this is how much we were appreciated. What a bunch of unforgivable humans that are fighting the government against being screwed, but they screwed us more than anyone. Screwing the people standing with them. They deserve what they get, and what comes around goes around. So that is what they have been left with. Let's see. Veterans for Freedom. Did they actually save the children? Jason, technically one guy they did. He was asked to leave. Not sure about any more. See. Honestly, I am not really surprised. I witnessed a similar situation a couple of years ago on the island with some of these same characters. These guys were a stain on society long before they became grift ... freedom fighters. Yeah. So this is what they ended up leaving them. Let's move on to the next. Oh yeah, here's some of these. Let's take a look at the type of people that were staying at this trailer.
I've been selling my soul, walking all day. Make democracy happen. All the time I heard the bullshit, man. There's infiltrators behind us. So I can sit out here and waste my life away. Drive back home and drive my troubles away. It's a damn shame. What the world's gotta do.
Not the fuck out, you fucking bitch.
People like me. People like you.
God bless you. God bless you.
I wish to just wake up and it not be true.
The numbers so far from what I've been hearing are what, 3 million.
But it is. Oh, it is. Living in the new world. I've been
freedom fighters. Getting drunk, doing drugs, and accomplishing nothing. So why would people have a problem? Why would Diagolon have a problem with the people in this movement? You call Diagolon grifters for selling some merch, for putting on some live streams where people choose to pay them or not, or putting on an event where they get to go meet the people around the country that many of, at least half of it or more, is free, and the other one, the actual events themselves, people can choose whether to pay for it or not. Meanwhile, these people are living off the generosity of other people, getting drunk, doing drugs, accomplishing nothing, and then screwing over the people who were generous enough to open their homes to them. Let's see, more on this. Just spoke with Chet Wiggins. It is much worse than we thought. Thousands of dollars of damage to the property, thousands of missing tools, and so much more. They need help with cleaning and clearing the garbage, fixing the damages, and getting back to some reasonable state. If you can help, post a message below. If you are able to go there or help clean up, please do. Financial assistance is likely needed. Stay tuned for more details. Thank God for the amazing people that have already reached out. Chet was in tears when I spoke to him. This is a disgrace. More on that. And then help Danielle and cancer survivor Chet Wiggins restore Castleman Heart. Oh, that's just more. That's just the actual fundraiser itself for the Give, Send, Go there. But that's what they ended up doing to these people. And that's where the criticisms of a lot of people in the freedom movement come from, is that they're trying to relive what was captured during the freedom convoy. And this is what their lives have turned into, just touring around the country to LARP as if they're doing something without actually doing anything, to take people's money so that way they can keep doing this. They can buy more alcohol, they can buy more drugs, and keep just singing songs in a parking lot somewhere. This is where a lot of it comes from. That doesn't mean that there aren't people in the freedom movement that aren't really trying to get something done. But this is the face of the modern day freedom movement. I remember even when they came back to Ottawa in 2023, a year after the convoy actually happened, there was some, let me see if I can find it real quick. Because there was just a ridiculous story about them, about what they were talking about. Reunion. Let me see. Let's see. Fuck, I want to see it. It was something to do with a church, and they were holding like these fake. They were holding like these fake trials where they were like putting politicians on trial or something who weren't actually there. This is where the whole Queen of Canada thing came about, where there's some Filipino woman that's been going around saying how she's the legitimate Queen of Canada and somehow has some entourage. Oh, I don't remember. Oh, I think this is it. Hold on. Group linked to Freedom Convoy to appeal its eviction from former St. Brigid Church. I think this is... let me just take a look here. Don't think this is it. Oh, yes. Okay, it is it. Okay, hold on. I just want to see Comer. William Comer, director William Comer said Tupac goal was to move back into the church and to resume a fundraising purchase the building as originally planned. Let's see, where was it? Let's see. Comer said the organization wouldn't be deterred by the violence and hatred among those who had protested against Tupac. It's down a little bit more. At one point in August, things turned surreal. Comer sat on a chair on the church step wearing a homemade crown and holding a scepter while Tupac supporters squirted protesters with giant water pistols. Tupac also announced that it would create a private security force to patrol the former church property and would initiate private prosecutions for trespassing and other offenses. Landlord said that the court document that Tupac failed to pay rent, but Comer disputes that. But yeah, they're basically... Look, this is the type of thing that they were doing. It's a LARP. That's all it is. It's a goddamn LARP. So why would Diagolon be critical of those in the freedom movement? Because this is all that it really has ended up being. But this has gone on for quite some time, so let's try and end this. We don't have long. We only got about a minute left in the video, and then we can end this. Because what are we at? An hour and 45. I did not know this was going to take this long. I thought it would be a lot quicker. But let's go back to the video.
These are fucking losers. Like, it's a loser country full of weak, soft, pathetic people. Just, sorry, that's what it is, man. That's prove me wrong. You know, where's the lie, right?
Yeah, I can't.
Because that is what it is. He's right. They're just it's a hobby. We're gonna go scream at empty buildings, and a lot of these people, they don't fit anywhere else. That's why they're there. Like the freedom people. Yeah, that's why they're there, because they have nowhere else to go. They don't have any jobs, they don't have any families, they don't have any social circles. And they're losers that found kind of a niche where this was a place that took everybody, because at the time, when this kind of came down on everybody, it was like the more the merrier, the numbers, right? And it's just kind of attracted all these vagrants and politically homeless people who don't really believe it. They're just a train. A lot of them are drug addicts and alcoholics, and they just want to party and fuck around. And that's a lot of it. That's most of it. And that cast, I mean, that was why I had a hard time being embraced.
All right, and that's where we're done. The video is over. So a lot of the accusations in that video were pretty typical that have been out there for quite a long time. The only thing that was missing was actually questioning Jeremy's military record, because I know that early on when he was doing this, a lot of people were even questioning, was he really a soldier? Did he really go to fight in Afghanistan? Yada, yada, yada. That was all that was missing. But the accusations jumped around from all over the place, and it didn't seem to really be coherent as to what the end goal of Diagolon really was, or the end goal of Jeremy Mackenzie. Now, I think it was quite clear that I have support for Diagolon. And why is that? Now, I started off watching him back in pretty early on, probably like 2017, early 2018, right as he was coming onto the scene. Back when he was Raging Humanist is when I started watching him. And our politics are very similar. A lot of the problems that we both see a lot of the same problems, and we both see that there's only really the solutions that are being proposed right now are not real solutions and will not lead to anything. And they're the only ones that are actually, well, maybe not the only ones, but they're one of the only ones that are really arguing for real life activity. And most of this activity is just that. It's finding people, getting into better shape, learning new skills, just doing what you can to be a better person while being part of a community that's going to look after each other. And that, to me, is what was appealing to me. Because it was no longer just sitting behind a computer and doing this. Part of the reason I was gone for so long is the reason I left the internet back in like mid 2020 or late 2020, whatever it was, is because I was getting really demoralized. I was getting really demoralized because we were in the middle of everything that was going on with COVID, and that was a big focus for me. And myself and everyone else out there, we were showing the real problems with what they were saying about COVID, what they were doing about COVID, and it was quite clear of what they were trying to do. While at the same time, simultaneously, I was involved with an investigation into the Porta-Peak massacre. And that, I know, we were definitely making an impact. We were making an impact in that things that we said would have to get addressed. In the live streams we were doing, we would talk about a problem, address a problem in what the RCMP said happened, and their next press conference, they would come out and try and plug that hole. But it seemed like nothing changed. It seemed like the government and the RCMP were able to get away with their bullshit investigation and conclusion with what happened at Porta-Peak, and at the same time, the COVID measures were just ramping up, getting worse and worse and worse, and nothing was changing. And I meant to take a short break. I didn't mean to be gone for so long, but I didn't have it in me. It seemed so pointless doing this because nothing was changing. I felt like I was just yelling into a void. I could sit there and scream and yell all I wanted, but nothing was going to change. And I did try and come back several times. I would try and put out videos, and maybe I'd get through them, and then I would just delete them because I don't want to do this. There was more than once where I'd be halfway through a video and just shut it off because what's the point? I don't care, man. And that's why my upload was so sporadic for a long time, was because I would try and get back into it, and I just couldn't. I just couldn't because it just seemed like there was no difference. And Diagolon at least gave me something in the real world that I could work towards. It could bring me something to be part of, and maybe I could not change the direction that Canada was going, but at least I was doing something, and I could change something about my own life and something about the well-being of my own family. All these things matter. And that gave me, I found, a renewed purpose. So while, yes, it's good to be doing this, making videos or doing writing, that is not the be-all, end-all anymore. Putting out tweets isn't going to change anything. Making YouTube videos isn't going to change anything. And I know that someone like Jeremy McKenzie is very polarizing. You either like him or you don't. There's no real in between. But like I said, a lot of our thoughts about what was happening is very similar. So that's why I found myself drawn to his live streams, and I was drawn to the movement, is because at the very least, there was actually a group of people out there that thought like me, had the same concerns as me, and was willing to do something about it. But you can make your own decision about Diagolon. That's it for me tonight. It's been way too long. I'm Adrian Lloyd. This is just my stupid opinion.